Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Tax Matters. I'm Chamaka Ohawuchi. There are 12 months in a year, and just like that, the first month has come to an end. We are at the end of January 2023. In the taxation kingdom in Nigeria, it has been an eventful month. There have been several activities and occasions, but three major events stand out. From January 1st, 2023, company tax clearance certificates became available at the click of a button. Again, from January 1st, 2023, MTN Nigeria Communications PLC, Airtel Networks Limited, and all money deposit banks joined the ranks of ministries, departments, and agencies, and oil and gas companies as VAT source deduction agents. And then the big one. On Monday, the 23rd of January, the FIRS announced that it collected a whopping sum of 10.1 trillion naira in the year 2022. This is the first time ever that the service will cross the 10 trillion naira mark. That's news. That announcement has continued to cause ripples in financial and political circles. Today's episode of Tax Matters will revolve around these three earth-shaking events. We begin from the beginning. With effect from 1st January 2023, companies' tax clearance certificate became obtainable at the click of a button. By law, tax clearance certificates must be issued in 2 weeks. That law is still there. It has not been amended, but because of the giant technological strides achieved by the FIRS in recent time, TCC is now obtainable on Tax Pro Max automatically. Once you have fulfilled all your tax obligations, it is there in your ledger. We can confirm that we saw our own in our ledger early in January 2023.
How many of you have seen our public notice regarding TCC by 1st of January? We are automating our TCC. As long as you have your positive ledger, you've updated your records, you can obtain your TCC within 1 minute. Request your TCC, obtain it, and go without coming to the tax office.
Now to the second event, Withheld VAT. Yes, Withheld VAT. We recall that when we first brought you the story of Withheld VAT late in December 2022, we made the point that you now have 3 terms that you should keep close to your hearts: value-added tax, withholding tax, and now Withheld VAT. MTN, Airtel, and all money deposit banks have now joined ministries, departments, and agencies across the 3 tiers of governments, as well as oil and gas companies, as VAT source deduction agents. Please note that we mentioned among the communication companies only MTN and Airtel. As things stand today, only those 2 have been given the privilege and right to act as VAT source deduction agents. No other person or company has the right to withhold VAT. This is how it works. For any contract or sale, either of product or service, the invoice must be a VAT invoice. That is, the invoice must have a VAT component, and that VAT must be paid along with the cost of goods or service. But when it comes to withheld VAT, MDAs, oil and gas companies, banks, MTN and Airtel have been given the mandate not to pay that VAT component to their supplier, but rather to withhold it at source and remit to the FIRS on behalf of the supplier, indicating the supplier's details, especially TIN. How do you file for withheld VAT on Tax Pro Max?
This is Tax Pro. This is the landing page for logging in. Whenever you see admin login, that one is for staff or tax administrators. For taxpayers, whenever you click there, you see taxpayer login. Click on taxpayer service, click on office list. Pick Aliko Oil. Okay, I'm picking this taxpayer just at a random. And these are some of the menus at the home page, which represents your electronic file. As earlier said, if you're filing withholding VAT, You can actually access it from group taxes. Click on group taxes. At group taxes, these are the taxes that are filed there. First and foremost, at the topmost is the returns previously filed. Whenever you file your withholding VAT, withholding tax, payee, that's pay as you earn, and stamp duty, all of the records of your filing and payment are kept on the returns previously submitted. Then, we are focusing on withholding VAT, which is the VAT deducted as source. Click on the withholding VAT. Once you click at the withholding VAT, you'd see, it will bring the interface. First and foremost, on Tax Pro currently, we only transact or process Naira transactions. We're yet to automate the foreign currency transaction module. So you have to select the currency of transaction, which is Naira. Select the Naira. You have to select the period of returns. Since today is 13th of December, still within the due date, we can leave the date like that. But if you're filing previous withholding returns, you can actually adjust the date to the particular month that that withholding VAT relates to. What that means is this enables the beneficiary to know which particular transaction you're remitting the withholding VAT for. Because we know VAT now is based on what? Cash basis. Am I right? So there are transactions that would have occurred time back, but actually payment is happening now, isn't it? So you have different transaction periods, but the payment is coming now. So you must select a period that represents the qualifying period of the transaction for ease of reconciliation. Are we together? We've seen instances whereby transactions that actually relate to 2021, you see someone remitting them as if it relates to 2022 December. If you do so, you actually create reconciliation issues for the respective beneficiaries. So there's a template which we have modified. Go to my document. This is the withholding VAT schedule. For those that have been using it, I know you're familiar with it. This is the withholding VAT schedule, which you'll be using to actually upload the details of the beneficiary. What are the key line items which you must take note of? For those that have been working with this schedule, I know your nightmare, and I know how to address them. First and foremost, you see there, do not edit, just add record. This schedule or this template is actually a formatted template. It's very sensitive. You're not supposed to modify. All you need to do is to add your record. And at the end of it, you push it to the system. Currently, what we have is only in Excel format. But by January, we're going to also include CSV file format, particularly for banks and telcos, because we know the volume of transactions that you actually handle are in thousands of hundreds. Am I right? So Excel might not be able to actually handle the volume of transactions that will come from you. Area of focus is, first and foremost, the name of the beneficiary, the TIN of the beneficiary, the transaction date. We know what we mean by transaction date. The date of transaction, as I explained, might be different from date of what? Payment. But what was the contractual date, or what was the date that that particular transaction was consummated, which becomes a valid contract, and the delivery of that service was achieved? That's what we're looking at. Then the transaction description, then we have transaction amount, then the rate. The rate is also open. We know transactions that occurred prior to 2019 Finance Act, where the VAT rate was modified. There are some remittances that are still coming from previous periods, isn't it? So, depending on whatever rate is applicable for that particular transaction, that's why the transaction date is very important. Because the transaction date will also tell us which rate you're supposed to use. So, The transaction rate for this one, since the transaction occurred in 2022, the transaction rate is 7.5. The tax type is WVAT. Are we together? Then the tax amount is the VAT amount. Then the schedule reference also is a numeric field. The schedule reference can be zeros or ones. It means that it can be from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. So, however, it's not an alphabetic column, it's a numeric column. Like banks, we know you remit your withholding. Now you're going on to withholding VAT. The month of returns represents the schedule reference. Let's say if I'm rendering returns for November withholding tax or withholding VAT, what I'm expected to enter there, depending on company policy, because every company has its own coding. But for tax purposes, if you're rendering November, what I'm expected to see there is 11. That's 1-1, isn't it? If you type November there, alphabetic, the system will reject it at once. So it is a numeric field. Once you're done preparing your schedule, that is when you can now go back to the withholding VAT dialog box and upload.
This guide to filing withheld VAT on Tax Promas continues next episode. I run an organization that organizes conferences. Our events are sponsored by companies and PR agencies. When we issue invoices containing VAT to them, they refuse to pay us the VAT, claiming that they are withholding it. Is it correct? No organization, no company, no person has the right to refuse to pay VAT on the cost of goods or services supplied to it, because even those who have now been appointed or were earlier appointed as VAT source deduction agents are not exempt. No organization, no individual is exempt from paying VAT. It is only some goods and services that are exempted.
Do you provide goods and services? Then you must answer these important questions. Are you registered for VAT? Do you charge VAT on the goods and services you provide? Do you keep records of all your transactions? Do you file VAT returns? Do you remit VAT collected to government coffers? If your answer to any of these questions is no, then you are breaking the law. The law demands total compliance. Therefore, you must register for VAT. You must charge VAT on goods and services. You must file VAT returns. And you must remit all VAT collected on behalf of government within 21 days to the bank nearest to you. To do otherwise is a crime punishable everywhere in the world. VAT is prescribed by the law. Do the right thing. Collect and pay VAT. This message is from the FIRS. It pays to pay your tax.
Yes, there is indeed a VAT exemption list. The VAT exemption list is clearly stated in the VAT Modification Order 2021, which came into effect on the 30th day of July 2021. The list of exempt items is on your screen. Suffice to say, however, that the list essentially revolves around food, agricultural products, medicine, education, renewable energy equipment, baby needs, and military hardware. The aim being to offer necessary succor to ordinary citizens. Mrs. Lovett Ononoga, Acting Director of VAT at the FIRS, shed small light. We are aware that the Finance Act 2020 came up with a long list of these VAT exempt items. Now, what are these items and why were they exempted?
Basically, there are categories of products and services, goods and services that are exempt. I will first of all mention the broad categories. I'll probably look at a few to explain, because there's a lot of confusion and ambiguity about and in those areas. Then I will tell you why the exemptions were actually put in place. So the broad categories are: one, we have the airline tickets. Simply put, the airline tickets, aviation, but not all aviation industry is exempt. We have the tickets, we have some equipment, commercial aircraft engines and equipment and services. So this excludes private jets just because they are luxury, okay? So they are not exempt. Then you have basic food items. Most basic food items, things that people eat every day, are also exempt, like cornmeal, maize, just rice, things like that. They're all exempt. Raw food materials, yam, potatoes, tomatoes, all those things people eat every day, they're all exempt. Then we also have baby products. Baby is defined as from 0 to 36 months, that's 3 years. So anything above that is not exempt, but anything, 3 years and below, products for babies are exempt. Then we have also the category of education. Educational materials are also exempt. And then we have medical and pharmaceutical products and services are also exempt. Humanitarian goods and services, deployed in humanitarian, that's for the good of, mankind, they are exempt. Then you have some petroleum products such as kerosene, things like that are exempt. All that is in the modification order, is on our website under circulars, and, anyone can have access to it, to the details. Okay, I wanted to talk about water. Water is an interesting one. Water is exempt, but not all water is exempt. So we have water that is sold, spring water that is sold in the open market or supermarkets, it's fine, it's exempt. But when that same water is now sold in a restaurant and a premium added to it, then it becomes vatable, okay? So we differentiate that when we go to audit that, and then we try to educate and sensitize our taxpayers so that they know in calculating how much VAT is due, to know which one to, apply the VAT on and which one not to. Why exempt? I mean, the very, very obvious reason is that, like I said, the VAT 7.5% is borne by the final consumer. Now, government tries to make life easier for the ordinary citizen and not to overburden them on things that are basic things used or needed to put body and soul together. So another category I forgot to mention that is exempt is agricultural products, because these all have to do with production of food to keep body and soul together, and everything. So education is a basic requirement for everyone. Medical is basic requirement, everyone needs it to survive, So you don't want burdening people on those things that are critical for life, okay? So government tries to ease that burden, and by applying them, it becomes a tax expense to the government. And you have to understand, it's not every tax claim that actually excludes some of these things from VAT. There are some tax jurisdictions that actually put a VAT on their citizens on some of these things. So Nigeria's tax expenditure becomes very huge. We are actually looking at it now to try and see areas where, or to try and quantify the amount of money the government is actually giving away as tax expenditure.
So remember to issue VAT invoice, and remember to demand that the VAT so indicated on your invoice is paid to you, except when you are dealing with a legally recognized VAT source agent. We conclude with the story of the 2022 collection performance of the FIRS. On Monday, the 23rd of January 2023, the FIRS announced that in the year 2022, total tax collection was 10.1 trillion naira, made up of 4.09 trillion naira in oil taxes and 5.96 trillion naira in non-oil taxes. Mr. Muhammad Nami, Executive Chairman FIRS, explains the secret behind this success story.
When we came on board in the year 2020, we carried out evaluation of our operations, of FIRS operation. We identify issues that requires urgent attention. So we categorize those issues into 4. There will be need for us to rebuild FIRS institution. Number 2, there is the need for us to make FIRS a data-centric organization. The days of brick and mortar operations globally has disappeared. Everybody uses technology. So without technology, you cannot do tax administration. We also feel we should be very close to the customers, our taxpayers. So we did everything possible to make FIRS a customer-centric organization. And then we cannot do it alone. This is a functional world. And in a functional world, the carpenter needs the farmer. The doctor also needs the farmer. The farmer too will need a doctor. So we take care of the fact that we need to take stakeholder engagement very seriously. So this is what we eventually did. And how do we go about it? We now come up with various reforms internally in which we are able to automate our processes. Now, by June 2021, you recall that we introduced our tax form max, which today is a game changer in FIRS. Our collection continues to improve on an annual basis. Through the tax form max also, today, you don't need to visit FIRS to be able to do tax clearance certificate. I always share with people that statutorily, you have 2 weeks to apply for and get tax clearance. In the past, it takes even more than that. Today, you can use 1 minute to start processing and getting your tax clearance without necessarily visiting the FIRS. We also came up with Core Tax Center so that people that have issues with their tax obligations, issues in paying taxes, issues of registering, issues on answering tax queries or tax audit, or issues on legal interpretation to tax law, you can phone into that center, ask questions. So customers don't need to travel from their one location to other in the bid of trying to get answer to certain questions. Just make a phone call, that is done. And as far as our institutional rebuilding process is concerned, we unbundled the 4 FIRS processes. Before I came on board, the entire administrative process were centralized, but today we have unbundled it in a manner that we have groups working, we have departments working. As the executive chairman of FIRS, I see little of even the correspondence coming in so that the system will continue to work. Staff morale is now second to none in this country. During our task week, during the customer service day in the whole country, there were issues all over that it's only FIRS that seems to be enjoying. It's not so. We have just put in policies, we are just putting measures in place that have carried them along, that we work as a team, that we communicate free, we run an open door system that everybody, every taxpayer, every staff can walk into his supervisors, talk to the supervisor, and things go the way it should be. So these are the little things we have done to be able to fix FIRS, and that is the result that we are today seeing as a revenue generation agency of the government.
Kudos to the FIRS, kudos to Mr. Muhammad Nami. Indeed, the revolution is afoot at the FIRS. We thank you for watching today's episode of Tax Matters. Let's do it again next week on this same station, same day of the week and same time of the day.